Hello and welcome to Wingin It. And we are back again here with another tournament game. This one from a different tournament. This is the Akiki Apocalypse, but it is another Oceania tournament that we have on the go. So yeah, not featured any games yet from this tournament. Have plenty of others from the other ones ongoing. But as you start to get knocked out of tournaments, you can't afford to be quite so picky about the games that you choose to feature. But yeah, recorded these two, and we're post-commentating here. And yeah, I think they were pretty interesting games with an interesting opponent as well. So I'm sure many of you watching will be keen to get these games on your screen. So we're going to jump here into this. It's a best of three as always in these knockout tournaments. And we're going first in this game one. So let's take a look and we'll see what we've got to work with in our first starting hand. And it is definitely one that excites me. We've got plenty of good options here. Not only do we have what looks like potentially a nice full tuck opening here with, of course, Blue Throat and Bush Tit. We've also got Maltoni's Warbler. And whenever you're on the Oceania board, I think as soon as you see these teal powers, they let you play additional birds. I think you've got to try and shoehorn them into your strategy. They're just so good. I do find that pretty much ordinarily in Oceania, I'm sort of taking all the actions anyway, especially in that early game. So yeah, being able to get the extra birds down is so strong. So yeah, you'll see kind of initially, I do just jump on that full tuck setup. Maybe it's just kind of old habits die hard. But yeah, I think the more I kind of thought about this and went through the motions and obviously checking the feeder, checking the tray as well. We did have the great tit there in the tray, which is a really good opening forest bird and certainly works well with the Maltoni's Warbler approach if I'm going to be trying to get these expensive birds down. Something like the great tit that lets you gain additional food and really good at getting additional nectar as well. Actually, with the resetting the bird feeder, you're pretty likely to see that nectar on the reroll. So yeah, just as I say, making sure I'm picking the right things in the starting hand. Don't want to rush into it, don't want to make too many mistakes. I've been kind of looking at these end of rounds. I think they don't really work too well for the full tuck. I mean, maybe the third and the fourth, but you're looking quite far ahead there to be sort of planning around end of round goals. Yeah, I think certainly with a Maltoni's Warbler setup, you know, getting food cost of birds down, getting lots of birds down that don't have eggs can definitely be a possibility. So you'll see I'm even sort of considering not even going with the Blue Throat here, just going Maltoni and Bush Tit, and obviously with that great tit in the tray, that will kind of be one. Kelp Gull is a pretty good bird. Got to be honest with you. Certainly with Maltoni's setup, if you're going to have extra food flying around with a great tit. Certainly using that Kelp Gull power, being able to discard as many food as you want and drawing extra cards. And then potentially if you've got Bush Tit, you can obviously turn those into points and eggs as well. So lots and lots of options, lots of way to play this opening, I think, here. You see we're going with Bird Feeder. That's purely because the alternative choice on the bonus card is not a very good one. I find these Forest Data Analyst and the other Data Analyst bonus cards really tricky to work with. They're almost too much hassle for the points you get. So yeah, Bird Feeder, as much as it's not a very good bonus card, I think if you go Maltoni, if you're playing lots of birds, you've got every chance. And yeah, if I do go Blue Throat, Bush Tit and Great Tit, that's already 3. So you know, we're getting more than halfway towards at least getting some points of that, and we do give ourselves a good chance of even maxing out and getting the full 7 points there. So yeah, as I say, this is kind of, I think, the way to approach this is to keep these 3 birds. We do indeed in the end do that. Got the extra nectar, of course, to keep at the start. So yeah, the plan forming in my head, as I say, grab that great tit turn 1, get it down, start taking food, and as long as we, you know, get some good rerolls, if we do get plenty of nectar, that's going to help. But we should hopefully be able to find ourselves in a position where we can get all these birds down and make use of the Maltoni's power at the end of this first round. And alright, here we go. Our opponent has picked, and they've kept 3 birds and 3 food. Very similar to us. But as I say, our first turn, we'd already planned it out. We'd already got this sorted. So yeah, grab the great tit. And as I say, being able to have this extra nectar at the start, really helpful, I think, in situations like this, where you want to go a bit greedy on the cards. I think if this was on the base boards and I had to keep just those 2 food and then go grab a food before playing the great tit, I would have maybe thought a little bit more differently about the keep, maybe not kept the Blue Throat, not kept the Bush Tit. But being able to, as I say, keep the extra nectar, just be able to get the great tit down straight away, really helpful. So unfortunately, my opponent, they went and just grabbed all the nectar. So that is definitely an approach I've seen people take. When you see 2 nectar in the feeder, if you think your opponent is going to draw cards or play some other bird, you can keep an extra card in your hand, discard that, grab the nectar, and get a bit of a head start. So it seems like that might be what they're doing. And what they're also going to be doing is potentially causing a bit of chaos here. A black-headed girl going down. Not the kind of bird you want to see at all on your opponent's mat. So yeah, a bit of a shame. And maybe makes me think a little bit more carefully about the food that I choose from this feeder. So you see, immediately went to go grab that nectar, but my mind was telling me, no. If you take that nectar, it's only going to get stolen from the black-headed gull, and it's sort of a double whammy because not only are you losing that nectar, but your opponent is gaining it. So yeah, I definitely expected them to be drawing cards in this position, and I'd rather have them steal the worm or the seed or the fish and then let me grab the nectar, which of course I can then use on my immediate next turn to play, for example, Moltoni's Warbler, rather than the other way around. Let them steal it off me and then there's no nectar in the feeder to replace it with. So there's definitely a little bit of extra thinking, a little bit of mind games. As I say, when you're against black-headed gull, it just distracts you, I think, sometimes. Makes you think a little bit more carefully. Makes you sort of go out of your way to try and avoid it. And maybe I went out of my way too much because they didn't go and steal my food. So I can kind of look at this both ways and think maybe I should have taken the nectar and then just got a bird down. But I think if I did have a nectar, my opponent could always have just gone and drawn cards first rather than play the nuthatch and steal it from me. So on this turn, didn't really have any choice. I mean, all the nectar came up, so I'm going to take it. I think as soon as you have 1 nectar, you may as well have more, because with black-headed gull, of course, you can only steal 1 food at a time, so it doesn't matter if I have 1 nectar or 3 nectar in this case. They'll be able to get 1 anyway. And the good thing is that in this situation is even if they do steal a nectar, there's more in the feeder, so I'll at least be able to replenish it, as I do indeed have to do here. And we have a very, very difficult choice coming up on this turn, because having drawn cards, revealing Chihuahua and Raven. Now, of course, we do still have house rules in effect here. So Raven can't play it in this first round. And I think where I was coming from with this is going with the Moltoni. You don't often have spare turns. I had to get a lot of food. Obviously got to still lay eggs in order to meet the criteria for this Moltoni. I'm definitely thinking twice here about whether I actually need the Raven with the great tit, with the blue throat. Should have plenty of food. Is grasslands really the way I want to go in this game? You know, if I'd had other good grassland birds, maybe some tucking birds, maybe some other point scoring birds, I can definitely see myself building a nice grasslands engine here going into round 2. But yeah, it's kind of horrible for this to come up because, like I say, I'm really sort of trying to talk myself into taking it because my gut reaction was, I don't need this Raven. But the problem is, in a 1v1 game, any card like that that you don't get, your opponent gets. And I don't want to be leaving this Raven for my opponent because it is still a strong power. They can just do the digging this round, use the black-headed gull to get that little bit of food to play the Raven. And yeah, as I say, keep digging and find those additional grassland birds. Maybe they find the barn swallow, house finch, type of birds that I think you always look to pair with a Raven. But yeah, this is definitely a tricky spot. Really early in this game to come up to have this Raven sort of give me a bit of a dilemma because, as I say, if I draw cards here, I'm probably going to want to use the nectar just to get that extra benefit, and it's just going to cost me so much in terms of my own tempo to be able to, like I say, get everything down and use this Moltoni's Warbler. So we leave the Raven in the tray and we go about our own business. So yeah, first of all, let me know in the comments your thoughts on that, of course. What would you have done? Would you have been taking the Raven there, or would you be leaving it as I have done here? Because it should probably not be too much of a surprise that my opponent on their next turn is at least going to consider taking that, because there's maybe an argument to be made for them that they're in the same position as, well, maybe I don't need this Raven, maybe I don't want to take that, and if they've already seen me not take it, they think they can maybe afford to leave it, but of course they do take it. And that made me start to worry. I think, have I made a terrible mistake here and cost myself, giving away a Raven, which, as we all know from the baseboards, very, very strong bird. But yeah, I'm just going to go about my business. I'm actually going to be giving away nectar here. Now, I think normally with a blue throat, you don't really want to be doing that, but my opponent has so much nectar and they can't keep it at the round end. They want normal food, I think, here. They want to be getting non-nectar so they can keep it, play the Raven immediately in that round 2. So if I'm giving away nectar, as I say, it's almost kind of what they don't want to be getting. And there's another consideration here, actually, with the Raven, of course, is that there's a way for me to win this end of round goal that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do if I had not, or if I had picked up the Raven and not left it. So if I take the Raven, gives my opponent an extra turn to potentially lay eggs in the forest and win this end of round goal. But the way I can plan this out, having got the nectar there, I can use 2 nectar to play the Maltoni's Warbler. When I lay eggs, I can discard the fish, get a 3rd egg on that great tit, and then obviously use the blue throat to get the extra food for the bush tit and get that down with the Maltoni's power. So, like I say, a little bit of consideration there, basically getting a 6-point swing, I think, on that end of round goal, because, you know, going from losing it to winning it, I take 3 points off my opponent, gain 3 points for myself. So these are all of the kind of, you know, calculations and considerations that, as I say, were going on in my head, trying to work out if leaving the Raven is a right thing or not. So only time will tell. Like I say, it does kind of depend a little bit what they've got going. So at the moment, seems like they're going with the Cedar Waxwing. Just gives them maybe an opportunity to tuck some of these extra cards that they're getting hold of. They did pick up that kelp gold that I talked about earlier, so every little bit of extra food they get is going to be able to turn into cards. So, as I say, definitely some benefit for them to consider. But we're just going to keep giving out nectar because they already had 2. So 3rd here definitely makes things difficult if they do want to play that kelp gold. You know, maybe forcing them into missing out on a nectar. And as I say, not giving normal food just to try and delay that Raven, because it is still a really good bird. As much as I kind of talked it down and said it's not maybe quite so good for me in this game, I think it could still be very strong for my opponent. So if I can, as I say, slow them down for being able to play that in round 2, I will try and do that. But it's Maltoni time, we get our bush tit down, so definitely not great card draw. So we are maybe going to have to dig a little bit in this second round. But I think that's a good thing with bush tit, is that you can afford to do that digging, get 2 points of time with the tuck and the egg. But yeah, Maltoni games, as with every other game of Wingspan, they can be won and lost on your card draw. So yeah, we're definitely going to need to dig and see what we can find, and hopefully add some good stuff into this wetlands. But got to be honest, that round 1, apart from the Raven coming up, it went pretty smoothly. Managed to get lots of nectar. Fortunately, didn't have too much nectar stolen from me. Had it a couple of times, I think, with the gull, but yeah, managed to get everything down. Managed to win the end of round goal. And we're really going to see how this this round 2 goes. So you see my opponent, they've only got 2 food, and they've only got 1 card, which we are pretty sure is the Raven in hand. So, you know, it's not like they can go and play that straight away. They might have to draw cards, but if they do, I've not got any food. So again, a little bit of thinking to do there with the black-headed gull. So yeah, they'll have to draw cards. They might have to take food. They might have to lay eggs first. This Raven's not going down till turn 3 or 4, I think, at the earliest. When otherwise, ordinarily, it could potentially have gone down on this first turn. So just sometimes these little things where you are just slowing down what your opponent can potentially do. You know, they weren't able to use the kelp goal there at all because they didn't have the spare food to throw. So we're going to draw cards. We're going to immediately draw something amazing there. Grey Catbird, pretty solid power. Potentially with this bush tit, you know, could be getting even more tucks. And speaking of even more tucks, hello, Mute Swan. Very nice to see you. So yeah, definitely a position here where I don't want to tuck either of these 2 cards. I think they're too good. They're both very, very powerful. And, you know, potentially we could be moving away from this Maltoni into just a pure wetlands engine here. Mute Swan Catbird. Just need to flesh it out a bit more, get more card access. But you could be potentially getting 3 tucks, of course, on that Mute Swan. And then copying it again with the Catbird, getting another 3 tucks. And then we still got the bush tit for another tuck and an egg at the end. So, yeah, we're going to skip the bush tit power here. You know, definitely something I don't like to do, but I think these cards, like I say, they're too good. They're just so strong, and I think they should be easy enough to get down. So obviously with this great tit, we can go and take food. We'll get 3. Should be able to get Mute Swan down. When we lay eggs, we can use the blue throat. I'm not too bothered about giving away a little bit of food, especially my opponent. When they do eventually manage to get their Raven down, they've still got the Waxwing getting some extra food as well. So yeah, there's options available to me, and if I can get some extra nectar off this bird feeder reroll, very, very nice indeed. So we do get that, and yeah, I think it's just going to be getting this Mute Swan down. As I say, it's really going to be about adding to this wetlands because, you know, Mute Swan, you can get 3 tucks, but they have to be on different birds, so you kind of need that 3rd bird down there. But I also need extra cards because only drawing 2 cards a turn, I can maybe discard an egg or a nectar and get a 3rd card, but then, you know, if I'm tucking all of those, I'm actually not gaining any cards to you know, leave myself stuff to play with the Moltoni. But yeah, Mute Swan has to go down. Even if I'm skipping some tucks and just getting that tuck and draw for now, it is still a strong power to be benefiting from. Yeah, I think this is just really, really excellent bird, especially now in Oceania alongside the bush tit. We can get a very, very nice wetlands engine going on here. So opponent did play their Raven. We drew a card they probably would have wanted there in the American Robin. And even the Fish Crow, I mean, you know, still thinking about maybe a Grasslands or maybe a full tuck. These are good birds to be picking up, but yeah, I think maybe not quite the right time for them. We'll get them tucked. Under the Mute Swan, we're going to draw, and hopefully it's not a great bird. Grosbeak could maybe have worked, but yeah, it's not quite on the same tier as Mute Swan and Grey Catbird, so yeah, not to the level that I would be considering skipping the bush tit tuck, because it's 2 points, and I think the eggs are going to be key here as well. If we want to be playing birds, I think, you know, discarding these eggs as well is going to be something I have to consider when I'm drawing cards, just to get the extra cards, get that extra card cycle through the Mute Swan as well. But yeah, opponent there laying eggs, you see they're not really short of nectar, so I've definitely been trying at least to not have food in my supplies, so that if they do want to draw cards, they maybe can't get that additional benefit. But as I say, I'm going to have to take food at some point, and if I'm giving them 1 food every so often when they're drawing cards, it's not the end of the world. But there's going to be a timing point, because again, nectar makes things difficult for my opponent. They can't be stealing nectar from me near the end of a round, because they're not going to benefit from that extra nectar, whereas if I have extra nectar at the end, no problem, I've got Moltoni, I can always use that on that final turn. So yeah, 2 turns left, and I'm sort of trying to work this out. I'm trying to work out if there's a way that I can maybe finesse this finish, because with the Corsican Nuthatch, of course, you get a food back when you go ahead and play it. I'm just trying to work it here, and I'm thinking, okay, this 100% looks like my opponent's going to draw cards here. They've got no cards, they just played the Storm Petrel. They're going to want to draw, and they're going to steal a food off me. And because that timing point I just talked about, they're not going to steal the nectar. So they are most likely going to want to steal that worm off me, which means if I lay eggs here, as I am going to do, or at least consider doing, I can safely give out a nectar here. Of course, they can always discard that maybe with the Kelp Gull. But as I say, it's going to benefit me here. And I can be pretty sure that they're not going to steal that. So my plan is going to be to let them steal the worm off me. I can go in, grab that nectar in the bird feeder as a replacement. And then, of course, with this Corsican Nuthatch, I can play that. And I can get myself the final piece of food to be able to go and play the Catbird with the Moltoni power. So it's a very convoluted end of round, very difficult situation. I think maybe looking at this end of round goal was sort of dragging me into it a little bit. I think we were doing pretty well, but certainly with these additional birds going down, Corsican Nuthatch, of course, hitting the bird feeder and giving another bonus card in its own right. So that is definitely going to be nice for us. But yeah, I think for me, this was just about giving myself options as well, because there's potentially a chance where actually they don't draw cards or they don't steal the right food off me. And yeah, makes things a little bit more difficult. I can always react to that. I can always draw cards again or lay eggs again, and still be able to get everything down, but maybe just in a little bit slower way. But this is about really trying to read my opponent's mind and work out what they were going to do and react to that, sort of almost preemptively react. Sort of as much of an oxymoron as that is, but yeah, set myself up in this position, as I say, to really be able to benefit, because equally they might not want to steal the food off me, because they might be thinking, if I steal a worm and they get a nectar. That is a big upgrade. But as I say, not really too bothered, even if they leave me that worm, because I still need it for the catbirds. I can still play the nuthatch, grab a nectar, leave myself with 2 nectar and a worm, and play that catbird ready to go into round 3. Well, I'm going to want to start drawing cards, and as I say, really look at copying some of these strong tucking powers in my wetlands. But yeah, my opponent definitely thinking carefully, I think maybe about how much food they want to discard. Of course, Wilson Storm Petrel can give some very difficult choices sometimes as well, where you are being given a choice of cards and you have to choose one of them to keep. In the end, they do steal the food off me, so like I say, I thought maybe they might skip that there. There is value in me upgrading my worm into a nectar here, but of course there's value in them getting a worm, whether it's to play birds, discard for extra cards or discard for extra eggs. So I don't think really you want to be missing out on that too much if you can avoid it. But yeah, we're looking really strong at this end around, so we actually don't need to play these birds for it, but we're going to play them anyway. We're going to get a Wildlife Gardener off the Corsican Nuthatch, which, to be honest, not a bad pickup. We're going to play this catbird, so we're only going to be 1 more away from scoring some points off that. And as I say, catbird going down, used up all of our food. Very clean, very nice. Winning these 2 end of rounds, as I said, when you run Moltoni, you give yourself a really good chance in the end of round. So we come here into round 3, of course. We're going to be drawing cards. We're going to be discarding eggs to get some extra cards. We're going to be seeing some stuff that looks pretty tasty, gotta be said. Pro Chicken, of course, extra bonus cards, always good. And Ethan Phoebe could be quite an interesting one to play, maybe just get a bit more food, of course hits the bonus card. But I'm mostly looking at this Peregrine Falcon and thinking, how can I really make use of this? In my Wetlands engine, building out this Wetlands is so key. I mean, you can see, having 3 birds down, you're only still drawing 2 cards. Every additional bird you play in the Wetlands after that gets you an additional card. So really getting that bump up from 2 cards to 3 and then 3 to 4, I want to be trying to get that kind of as soon as possible, really. So yeah, we're just going to go light on the Mute Swan tucks now, just do the tuck and draw, as I say, until we really build things out. There's a chance that keeping these extra cards to be able to throw them for food is going to get me more value than being able to just get the extra point from the tuck here. So there's kind of thinking both ways. You see, I'm sort of like debating here. Do I just do the 1 or the 2? I think in the end I do go with just the 1 tuck, just to keep my options open. So California Quail pops up, would have been really nice early, but yeah, there's a time and a place, and I don't think this was the time nor the place for that. So we'll get the tuck and they lay on the bush tit. Yeah, not the strongest wetlands so far, so of course we did have to discard an egg. We got a tuck and a draw, a tuck and a draw, and a tuck and a lay. So net 3 points. But as I say, it's all about the potential, and this is where, you know, the thinking about Mute Swan has to be about the long term. It has to be about the potential of the setup, not getting it down and how good is it immediately, because this is a bird that scales really well into the end game, and I can definitely see a position where I might not actually need to use the Moltoni in that last round. I'm sort of trying to work out, plan my turns in this round 3 and think about, okay, how can I set myself up in a position where that last round I just draw cards, because if the bush tit, you know, if I can clear all the egg space off that, I give myself 5 turns to draw, 5 turns to be laying eggs on that, and I'm not missing an egg. If my wetlands was full at that point, if I maybe have some additional card draw in there, I could be copying this Mute Swan, getting plenty of tucks to go from there and just score loads of points at the end. And cards in hand as well, I might have to do some thinking about that. That's potentially where some skipping of the Mute Swan comes into it as well. So yeah, my sort of thinking, my sort of approach here is use the Moltoni this round, almost just use it as the setup. So it's kind of an unconventional Moltoni's game. I think ordinarily you're using it to play big point birds, play these bonus card birds like the Pro Chicken I got in my hand, and just kind of use that as your setup. But this kind of feels more like I'm using the Moltoni just as a way of getting my end game ready, getting my full tuck engine set up. And I'm still scoring points along the way because I'm playing nice birds. And of course, when I have to lay eggs, getting the eggs and getting the food is handy as well. But a bit of a curveball here. We had the Raven giving us a hard time earlier. Now Killdeer pops up, so potentially it's a bit late. Potentially not something my opponent would want to go for anyway. But yeah, with the cards in hand in the round, they do still have that wax swing. Of course, in the grasslands now, you could discard extra cards for more eggs. So I think if they did go for the Killdeer, it still would have given them enough value here to the point where I didn't feel super comfortable leaving it for them. So we are going to draw cards, and we will pick up the Killdeer, but we're just going to leave it for now so we can do our other tucks and draws off this Mute Swan. So we're actually going to go for the full 3 this time because we did get enough stuff that we weren't too excited about getting rid of. The Pheasant Cuckoo comes up, which pink power did tempt me into keeping it. I'll be honest, it probably isn't going to get played because it is quite late and it is quite expensive on this 2 food, so we do just actually get rid of it straight away anyway. And we're keeping the Killdeer, so as much as that was a deny, there is potential for it to work here for me as well. Of course, the bush tit's getting eggs. These extra cards that I could be gaining off the Killdeer could be going on the bush tit, or of course on the Mute Swan where we are skipping tucks at the moment. So Well and Killdeer is very much on the menu. I'm still hoping for something better. I still do think this Peregrine Falcon is going to be the way to go in the wetlands, but you know, there are some other options here. And we do have this Australasian Shoveler in the tray, which is a co-op card power. Giving cards to my opponent doesn't fill me with that much joy, but it could potentially be an option here. But we're just going to go ahead and take food. We do get what we wanted, which is plenty of nectar. So yeah, I think any time on these OE boards, if you're kind of not taking food that often, you want to maximize off it as much as you can. Competing on nectar is going to be difficult against a Raven, but I think it is still worth it. And even just, you know, ignoring the points, it just gives you so much flexibility of what you can play. So opponent finally found the tuck and draw they want, so House Finch goes down. They'll be very pleased with that. And there's a little bit of thinking here for us to do in terms of this end of round. So I talked about wanting to clear off the bush to egg space, but birds with no eggs is one that I think I can push for and I think I can compete for. I'm definitely trying to work out, is there a world in which I can end with just one bird with eggs on it and have all these other birds? You know, I've got way more birds down than my opponent, so even if I have 1 or 2 that have got some eggs on, I should be able to make that work. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky end of round to work with, I won't lie. Especially with this bush tit, the egg space needs to be managed there, and I think there's always going to be some eggs on there. But yeah, definitely gave me some considerations. And knowing my opponent was laying eggs, they were likely to be following the same strategy and kind of stacking up. You'll see that on their House Finch. So yeah, bit of mind games to pay attention to all throughout this game, but certainly when an end of round comes up like this. So we are going to go ahead and draw cards, and now we have played Peregrine Falcon. Some interesting stuff comes up. So Stubble Quail, pretty nice. Does hit the bird feeder. Black-cheeked Hummingbird, again, like the Phoebe that we saw earlier and so quickly got rid of, does qualify for Wildlife Gardener. Unfortunately, Peregrine Falcon missing. Definitely a bit of a shame. Going to need that to hit, I think, as we kind of go into this end game. And yeah, we'll start doing some tucking and drawing on the Mute Swan. And yeah, this is the point where I feel like maybe I didn't play this quite right, because Black-cheeked Hummingbird, in hindsight, should be playing that, getting the Wildlife Gardener. It's basically an 8-point bird right there. Potentially, you know, if I want to grab that little bit of extra food as I go, it could be, you know, helping me play some birds potentially in that last round if I wanted to. But in the end, we go with the Shoveler now. As I said earlier, it's a co-op power. In Oceania, you're choosing another player, and you're both drawing a card from the deck. Obviously, in this case, I don't have any choice. There's only one other player I can pick, which means I'm basically giving a card away every single activation. And as I said, free cards to them in this position. They can always throw them for extra eggs. They've got this House Finch now, some more card cycle opportunities. Maybe save them a turn drawing cards. With the Waxwing as well, it's always going to be worth a point. And another food, which, again, could be a potential point, throwing it for eggs. So, yeah, there's a world here in which I actually really don't want to be using this Shuffler power too much, because while the extra card is an extra point for me, it could potentially be a point or more for my opponents. So, yeah, as I said, looking back, probably should have been keeping that Black-cheeked Hummingbird and just taking the safe points off the Wildlife Gardener, even if I'm skipping that power. It's still, you know, that final wetland bird in there just to unlock the 4th card, having got 5 birds down. So we've made our bed now, though. We've got our Shoveler. So yeah, we have to legs on this last turn if we're going to use Mortonium. I can definitely do that. Throw one of these foods is the plan. and get myself probably another nectar off the blue threat then. With the Meltoni power, we can get the shoveler down, and then, as I say, going into that final round should hopefully be pretty plain sailing. I think it's only if we draw a Benelli's Eagle or something like that I might go out of my way to play another bird or try and use this Meltoni, but as I said earlier, it's mostly just been using this Meltoni in rounds 2 and round 3 to just try and get this wetland set up. So we're definitely getting into that position now where the pieces are coming together, the wetlands is set up, and hopefully we can just run that very cleanly and score lots of points in this final round. And alright, here comes on to our last turn. My opponent laying eggs, maybe not too surprisingly, but as I say, does give me something to think about with this end of round. So we're in a strong position, but there is potential here where I lay eggs on the wrong bird, and I'm not going to be able to win this end of round. So there was definitely a part of my brain that was telling me, lay eggs, lay them all on the bush tit. If you miss those 2 points at the end, by not being able to get those extra 2 eggs on the bush tit, you probably make up for it by winning the end of round. But there was another part of me that was thinking, actually, I'm probably going to be able to win this end of round anyway. You know, I'm going to play the shoveler, that'll clear 2 off. In this case, most likely the bush tit. That's another bird, and then obviously the shoveler itself is going to count. So I should be in such a strong position. It's not going to matter. It's only going to be if my opponent does like a double or a triple play. The end of round goal swings could come into it. I then looked at my opponent's supply, saw they had 4 nectar, and yeah, whenever someone's stacking up on that much nectar coming towards their last turn, probably means they've got a double or a triple play as an option coming up. So yeah, if they do that double play in that forest, or anywhere to be honest, but it's most likely to be in the forest. That puts them on 8 birds with no eggs. And yeah, if I get the shoveler down, I'm also just going to be on 8. So there's potentially a tie here. And yeah, as much as I would gain those 2 points from the 2 extra eggs, I'm actually going to lose 3 off the end of round if that does happen. So as I said, maybe not the cleanest end game. Some little things here that I feel like in hindsight I could have done differently. And certainly this is going to be one of them. As you'll see, double play indeed does go down. So yeah, they get themselves up to 8. Unfortunately, we're just going to be getting the tie here. But it does mean the end game is going to be hopefully clean. It is going to be hopefully, as I say, just draw plenty of cards, get plenty of tucks. We're going to be hoping on that Falcon that it is going to hit a few times. But we're also maybe going to have some mind games here with cards in hand as that final end of round goal. We're going to have some things to think about. So yeah, should be plenty of drawing. I might skip a few turns in this final round, to be honest, because for me it's probably not going to be too difficult. But we'll check in again later as it gets more towards the crunch time in this final round, and we maybe have some decisions to be made around this end of round goal. And alright, we have jumped ahead to the last turn of the game. You will see, maybe no surprises, we've drawn cards 4 times. We have been skipping on that Australasian shoveler, so yeah, Falcon's been doing okay. It's been getting a few tucks, a few successful hunts. As I say, just on that shoveler, really wanted to skip that, didn't want to give my opponent points. I wanted to make them think a little bit more carefully about this end of round goal, and actually they did go and draw cards on one of their turns just to make sure they got the win there. And actually what that meant is on this final turn, I could use a shoveler because it didn't matter for them on the end of round goal. They're already going to win it. They can't turn this into any sort of point, so I can actually get some benefit. There's one turn of benefit off the shoveler, but as I say, probably the wrong play. Should really have gone for yeah, the black-chipped hummingbird earlier, but being able to use that shoveler, it meant we could max out on the swan and the catbird, and we keep our 1 card. So yeah, you know, this was an end of round goal that I could have challenged for. I could have skipped some tucks and gone and won it, but I think the number of tucks I would have had to skip, you know, would have had to plan a couple of turns ahead, and then you never know when your opponent's going to draw cards and maybe try and snatch it. So yeah, I think in theory it might have been possible, but certainly a safer play was just to take the loss there, take the 4 points, and max out on the tucks. So yeah, obviously not using the Meltoni in that final round, but that was never really part of the plan. We're going to lose some of these nectar races again up against Raven. Always tricky to compete. We do get a tie 10 each in that wetlands. Never seen anything quite like it, but lots of birds went down there, so lots of nectar to be spent. And we come here into the final scores, and I'll be honest, when this was cutting up, I had absolutely no idea. I thought this felt like it was going to be really, really close, you know, already behind and chasing them. End of round goals, pull it back a little bit, but eggs, actually not too many from my opponent either. So as it comes into the tuck cards, I know I've got plenty. I've just got to hope it is going to be enough, and those tuck cards do keep counting up and up and up. And so even with a few net points from my opponent, we hold on and we do get the win here. 122 to 102. So yeah, you know, looking at the scoreboard here, actually pretty comfortable, I think. A 20-point margin is pretty sizable. I didn't feel that comfortable. I didn't feel that comfortable going into score. I think maybe, you know, some of those little misplays, like I said at the end, with the end of round goals and thinking about which birds to play. Definitely some room for improvement there. But pretty nice bonus card on my opponent's side. Omnivore Expert makes that Raven even better for them. And yeah, not great bonus cards for me. Bird Feeder, you know, a bit of a mixed bag, 3 points. I think you take that from Bird Feeder. Wildlife Gardener, I definitely could have and probably should have got more points off that. But all in all, I think it's a pretty solid game. Using the Mossoni early on, as I say, just to get things set up, get the engine going. And Mute Swan Catbird is just so potent. It gave me really, really strong endgame scoring. You know, basically 7 or 8 points a turn there at the end. Pretty easy to repeat that and just, you know, keep tucking and keep scoring those points. And I think in the end, that is what got me safely over the line. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this game. This was a best of 3 series, so I will be featuring the other games from this series. If you want to see those, do stay tuned. Do hit that subscribe button. Make sure you got your notifications on as well. And I will see you in a future game very, very soon.